Welcome to Australia's greatest racetrack. Tomorrow, 12 hours awaits as drivers try and survive Mount Panorama. We're here once more for a special Friday night preview as the 40 minutes drivers in the VRS GT Sprint Challenge will get their final preparations done for tomorrow's 2022 iRacing Bathurst 12 hours. Hello everyone and welcome back to RaceSpotTV, where my name is Arjuna Kankipati, joined alongside by the Team Fordzilla driver William Chadwick. And Will, this is a fearsome place. Traditionally in Australia, this place is known as the young man's initiation place. I don't think there's much more fitting a name that you could give to a track like this, unless maybe you want to call it the Blue Hell.
For sure, it's a really challenging track. I mean, I was having a conversation the other day, and I really do think this is probably the most challenging special event. And this race tonight is going to be a great bit of preparation for these drivers.
And what's in store? Well, 30 GT3 cars over these next 40 minutes will try and survive lap one, and then the chaos that will ensue after that as well. Tomorrow we'll see upwards of 50 cars heading into these splits. Let's talk a little bit about balance of performances, because, I mean, balance of performance, GT3 cars, they go hand in hand, Will. We've got plenty of cars to choose from. One somewhat surprising car has leaped to the forefront with its fire-breathing nature.
Yeah, the McLaren really does seem to be strong here. Usually because the track is a high altitude, you're going to see the turbo cars being powerful, that being the McLaren, BMW and Ferrari. The Ferrari's balance of performance is probably knocked it out of contention, but I'd say that the BMW and McLaren are a car of choice, alongside also the Audi and also Lamborghini will be seen tomorrow. And
the McLaren seems to have a bit of an edge, not just because it's turbo powered, but the way that it can run a little bit higher wing and still have plenty of top end speed as well. You do mention the elevation. We're talking of 175 meters lowest to highest. So you climb up 175 meters, you plunge down 175 meters over the mountain, and the highest point on this track is 1,000 meters high, and very similar to what we see at the Red Bull Ring, for example. You're right, turbo powered cars will come into play. Let's talk a little bit though about the fact that tomorrow the race has shifted. In the real world, the race will be ran in May rather than in February, its traditional date, and we're going to see the same thing tomorrow. Slightly cooler track temperatures, maybe a little bit more running in the darkness to kick things off as well.
Yeah, so the race, I think the sunrise is about 20 minutes later than usual, and we could also end up back into darkness by the end, but I'm not sure about that. The track temperatures come down by about 20 degrees, so it's going to be a lot easier race to look at double stinting the entire way. But none of our drivers tonight will have to worry about that, because we're in a nice quick sprint format of 40 minutes.
You say doubles. Is there any chance we'll see someone be brave at the start and try triple?
You'd have to be extremely brave, especially at a track like Bathurst, where one mistake can ruin your race in a second.
We are seeing that potentially tomorrow we'll be joined by the likes of Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, who's competed here both in the GT3s but also in the V8 supercars as well. This is the home, of course, of the great Australian race, but at least for now it's all focused on iRacing and the 12 hours tomorrow. Before we get into the qualifying results, because it's winding its way down right now, let's talk a little bit about how important qualifying is here, Will. We talked about qualifying's importance at Daytona to be in the leading pack when you were working your way through the traffic. This, though, is just about being in the right position. If anything happens on lap one, you want to be as far forward to make sure you can escape the chaos.
Absolutely. This is probably the most important qualifying session you'll see in a special event this year. If you are further back in the mid-pack and someone spins, hits the wall, it could be chaos and your race over within inside 2 minutes.
It's one of those races where you can definitely lose it in hour one, but unless 49 other cars crash behind you, it's not a race that you can win. Last year we saw Enzo Benito and Max Verstappen drive an almost perfect race to take the victory. What will we see this time? About 90 seconds are left in qualifying right now, and it's the Altus Esports driver Luke McEwen that's put it on pole. Govan Kini second, with Matej Luchak in third. Plenty of quick drivers at the front. Quick prediction from you for what we'll see tomorrow, Will. I mean, of course, we won't know the entire entry list until we actually get into the race server itself, but Redline's coming forward with 4 or 5 cars. Coanda's going to have at least 3, maybe 4. Williams is going to have a couple there as well. Can't count out Altus given the pace that we've seen from them in qualifying. It's such a hard race to predict, but if you had to be put on the spot right now, who's your hot pick?
I'd probably have to go for Team Redline Orange, Max Verstappen and Luke Bennett. I think that's a really, really strong lineup. And as long as they don't hit the wall, because that McLaren is subject to getting damaged like heavy. If you hit the wall in the McLaren, it's a bit of a paper aeroplane. Yeah, I'd have to go with Team Redline Orange for my pick tomorrow. Yourself?
Well, let's take a little bit of a look at the track itself, and you'll see the conditions in which we're racing at right now. We're racing into the sunset. Time has just reached about 8:10 p.m. here in the virtual Bathurst, so about 3 hours inland of the coast of Sydney. And well, track conditions, 21 degrees in the air, 22 on the track. But just like that, qualifying is done. Let's take a look at the starting grid here in our Friday night preview, building up to the 2022 iRacing Bathurst 12 Hours. Luke McKeown for Altus Esports puts it on pole, while Govan Keeney, about 3.5 hundredths behind him for PGZ Motorsports, lines up on the outside of row number 1. The new recruit to Williams Esports, Luis Nasher, will line up alongside the Zebra, Felix Kornbach, while Fabio Undervers and Sven Haase line up alongside on row number 3. Then back in 7th will be the Red Bull Racing Esports driver of Yuri Kastorp. He'll be alongside Pablo Castro with John Rodriguez and Juan Blatenat rounding out the top 10. Harley Horton and Mateus Luchak, the Carbon Simsport driver, 11th and 12th, with Nicolas Laubish and Sergio Ignacio on row number 7. Sebastian Dunkel and Carlos Fenellosa, 15th and 16th spots, while Thibaut Prevost and Brian Lockwood, 17th and 18th. John Derrick and Benjamin Frigario round out the top 20, with Neto Nascimento, the first Brazilian in the field, down in 21st, alongside Adrian Furworth, Matthias Milnik, and Justin Brenner, row number 12. Jorge Garcia and Carlos Chicha, 25th and 26th, with about 2 seconds separating 1st to 27th, where we'll find Romain Verdililio and Bastin Salman, 28th. 2 cars not setting qualifying lap times, Lassie Urainen and Nick Madsen. Surviving lap number 1, that is crucial. What can you do, Will, to control your destiny here?
I think for sure that the cold tyres is going to be really, really hard, especially on these cars. It's so easy to lose it. But I think you need to take it quite easy on the outlap, and then start to push as the tyres come up to temperature.
And in terms of the pit stops here, what do you expect to see? One thing that we should really note as well is a rather difficult pit lane entry to make sure that A, you survive, but you don't lose time, because you work your way through a couple of switchback lefts and rights. But the pit entry commitment, the pit lane limiter line, is actually quite far into that sequence of corners.
Yeah, it's a really tricky pit entry, and you'll see drivers taking the 1X just to straight line their way and just gain a little bit more time. Also to mention, the pit lane speed limit is just 50 kilometers an hour, so it's a really hard stop. But yeah, pit stop times of around about 30 to 33 seconds, and we could see drivers saving a lot of fuel here and playing the strategy game.
Live in Mount Panorama, one final practice session for drivers building up to tomorrow's 12-hour sprint. Now, Luke McKeown for Altus Esports is in control of the field, 40 minutes on the clock. It's an all-out brawl to stay alive. McLaren front row, Audi, BMW, row number 2. McKeown picks up the throttle. We're racing, and already, oh my word, we didn't even get up into the cutting. A huge stack up, only 4 cars emerge unscathed, and they're still wrecking as they come across the line.
And that is what can happen at Bathurst. That is that is the biggest shunt I have ever seen while watching one of these events. That is a absolutely huge wreck as the leaders run away.
And they're still trying to come through Hell Corner. I'm struggling not to laugh, but this is where you expect the chaos. Up through turn 2, Griffin's Bend in towards the cutting. We've seen plenty of, Neto Nascimento, Carlos Fenellosa, they're still wrecking, coming across in towards turn number 1. 4 cars have survived. Luke McKeown, Luis Nasher, Felix Kornbach, and Fabio Underves. Adrian Furworth might have scampered away with minimal damage, but at least those top 4, McLaren, Audi, BMW, McLaren, it looks as though from the outside of the front row, it might have started with Govan Keeney losing control of his car. And, you know, when you lose control in Murray's Corner, there's nowhere to go. You're right in the path of oncoming traffic.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing is for certain now, this is going to be a purely strategy race. between the top two drivers. I think they're going to be playing a lot of fuel games, and they're just going to try and outsmart each other to undercut and hopefully run away with it. But don't count out the BS competition driver here, because I think Felix will probably manage to stay with them.
We've seen Felix on a number of occasions be quite quick in that BMW M4. Of course, BS Competition, one of the few teams, the 3 teams affiliated with BMW in official capacity, includes, of course, Team Redline. We'll see a couple of BMWs put forward from them tomorrow. It also includes, outside of the iRacing circle, G2 Esports. So top 4 working their way through the chase in towards the final corner. Very tricky and deceptive final corner. You hit that inside curb and it will really ruin your race. Here's a look at what happened, though. They're all fighting for position. Is there contact between the Audi and the McLaren, or does that McLaren just loop it by himself? And from there, the track is blocked. There is nowhere anyone can scramble through.
Oh my word, that is a monumental shunt. I mean, I think there was a bit of contact for Govand, and he just got out wide, and on the cold tyres, like I said, it's really, really easy to lose it. And as you can see, it had an absolutely huge consequence for almost the entirety of the field, apart from the front few runners. But we did say qualifying is very important, so
we just didn't think it would be that immediate. That's the reality right here. The cutting, this left-hand sweeper where you can almost be flat out from here until you get down into McPhillamy Park. That's usually where the trouble starts to go. And I can tell you, 14 cars are in pit, the top 14 not in pit lane. We started with 30, 2 have retired. Everyone else is in pit road right now. That is the extent of the damage that we've incurred before we even got to the green flag.
Yeah, like I said, absolutely monumental. But I wouldn't count out this race for being boring yet. We've got 3 drivers in contention here. We've got Felix just trying to stay into the draft. Believe me, it is a lot harder to stay in the draft than you think, as we see another replay here from someone a bit further back.
So this is from Furwith's perspective. He was one of the cars that got away with minimal damage. So here you can see, he might have actually got away without any damage there. That was real. Whoa, that is Moses parting the seas level of wreck avoidance there. He is about 3 seconds back from Underverse. I think he might have the chance, 5 seconds back from Underverse. He might have a chance of closing if the couple of cars out front try and squabble it out. But, you know, we go back now to what we thought this race might be about, doing fuel saving here. Stints for some of the cars, 30 laps. You'll see a 31 a little bit easier for other cars. But if you can do 32 laps, the expectation is, if you can't completely eliminate a pit stop from this race, Will, you can make that final stop really a splash and dash.
Oh yeah, I think we could see, it depends on how much they really emphasize fuel saving, but I think we could see some drivers saving a lot of fuel. You could even go potentially, I think I saw it earlier in the week that someone actually went 3 extra laps, which would obviously be 12 litres of fuel saved, which will only leave you refueling maybe around about 10 litres. But likelihood is we'll see, probably if they're starting to save, we'll see around 20 to maybe 18 litres of fuel put on board.
And we talked about it earlier, we'll likely see double stints because of the cooler track conditions. In years past, here in iRacing, we've seen those track temperatures reach upwards of 40, 50 degrees Celsius. Now, the potential peak is 32, 35 degrees Celsius, depending on the weather that gets generated. Again, dynamic weather in effect for these races. We might see as cool as 18 degrees, as warm at the start of about 22 degrees Celsius based on our testing. This is what I love, riding on board with Luis Naja down the hill. You see the commitment required, but I love that McLaren. Yes, it's old, but it breathes fire. What more can you want from a race car?
Exactly. I mean, you couldn't say it better, but it's just a fantastically looking car. And also, I mean, who doesn't like the flames? I mean, it's a fantastic car, and it will be sad to see it go once it does depart the service.
720S incoming. Is that what Will Chadwick is saying here?
I suspect so, but we'll have to see what the iRacing gods provide us with.
Well, seeing as you're the Team Fordilla driver, let's get that new Ford Mustang.
Oh, absolutely! I can't wait for that. I'm counting down the days to release. Oh, but yeah, no, that's going to be a great car to have in iRacing, and the more GT3s, the better. The more variety, the closer field spread, the more it starts looking like a real world race instead of sometimes Audi Cup, McLaren Cup, BMW Cup. Yeah, so yeah, it'd be good to get some newer GT3s in the game. Obviously, we've seen the BMW recently added, and there's rumours about having the 720S and also the Mercedes. So yeah, hopefully that we'll see those coming within the next few seasons.
Here is the Aber Vavatic driver of Bastian Salman defending from Benjamin Frigerio. Again, Bastian Salman, I think, was the final car that set a qualifying lap time. He started in 28th position. He is now plus 20. Seems to have a relatively clean BMW M4 as well. I think he might just let Frigerio go around the outside in towards Griffin's Bend, and that looks as though that's a Simsa Esports car, so maybe a new driver for the Middle Eastern-based team. They've got Thibaut Prévost in front of them as up into the cutting they'll work. Which section of the track, in your opinion, is more difficult, Will? Up the hill, up the mountain, I should say, it's a lot of commitment required. You can be full throttle around plenty of these corners. You need just as much commitment, though, coming down off the skyline and knowing where the bounds of your car are, especially down through the dipper, is so important.
I think it can actually depend on which car you're driving. I think maybe if you were driving the BMW, which is quite stable, going down the hill and in through the dipper, you'll probably say the first section of the lap where you have to be millimetre perfect. You're pinning the throttle, you're getting millimetres from the wall, you're really just looking to perfect your line, lose as little speed as possible through the top of the section. But if you're in a McLaren coming down the hill, the braking's incredibly tricky, and I wouldn't count it out of any. I've seen any of the big names maybe making a small mistake tomorrow.
Frigerio got one. Frigerio will get the second. That's not Prévost, excuse me. That was Nick Madsen in that Lamborghini for MAG Performance, and Lamborghini not putting up much of a fight. You can see the darkness is setting on the track. We're not likely to get to this point in the race because the race start tomorrow will be at 5:45. Green flag virtually here will be at 5:45. I don't think we'll get into the proper nighttime running, but it will be dark as Bastian Salman's actually coming down into pit lane. Not sure if he's got some more damage than we saw. He's trying to go for a long stint now. That would be a slightly surprising call, to be completely honest, with how things are shaking up. Reminder as well, you can follow live timing by heading to timing71.org. We have 16 cars still running. I think the graveyard here at Bathurst has claimed plenty of victims, and this is a race as well where we were kind of talking about the expectations for tomorrow in terms of the cutoff for top split. A lot of these drivers, it's somewhat controversial. I saw a Twitter argument developing yesterday about alt accounts, Smurf accounts. Lots of the top drivers, Louis Nager, for example, Eureka Castor, they're on the alternate accounts to prevent losing iRating the day before a big event. What's your thoughts on that, Will?
I think especially someone like Yuri as well. Like Yuri does his streaming, and when you're under pressure as a streamer to do race after race after race, it can lead to you maybe not performing at your best at times. So I think it's important that some of these drivers who maybe focus a lot on content creation can have a Smurf account in order to race on. And someone like Yuri's Smurf account is 7K. It's not a low iRating. Obviously his main being, I think, 9K or something, somewhere around there. But yeah, I think it's important for especially for drivers that are creating content, and also if you want to have fun, because believe you me, when you're on a high rating account, you're always worried about losing 100, because it's there's a lot of risk versus the reward you'll get.
Yeah, you do one race, you crash out, that's 100 lost, and then you have to do 10 races of gaining 10 iRating apiece to work your way back up into the range that you were before. McLaren really cutting it close as he gets lapped there as McEwen uses the draft, pulling away bit by bit. He's now 1 second clear. Quern back in hot pursuit of Louis Nager as well. And the draft range in these GT3 cars has come down bit by bit over the years, Will.
Yeah, I think it's around about, I always tend to look at about 1.1 seconds, which we are looking at the minute for this leading battle. But round Bathurst, at least what I've found this week, especially when following a McLaren with the monumental top speed, it's not as easy as you think to keep with them, especially if they're as good a driver as Luke McEwen, affecting all of these corners here down the hill. Yeah, it's quite a challenge to keep with. I think once you're within maybe 0.5 of a second, you gain such an advantage that it's very hard to drop back. But if you start to drop back to 0.8 a second, 1.1, you really have to start driving as good as the car ahead in order to catch them.
And cool Luke McEwen, well, putting his head down, pedal to the metal. Last time by for him was a 2:01.586. He does have the fastest lap of the race at a 2:01.139. Just a little bit of fall off as he has the tires fall out from underneath him. And one thing that I'm doing the race tomorrow. I'm not commentating. I get to do some driving tomorrow, Will, and I'm driving the BMW. And the thing that I noticed is the first couple of laps, car feels good. Then you get to this fuel window between 115 liters to 60 to 80 liters where the car just feels bad. I'll be honest, it just doesn't feel fun. And as soon as you get to like the halfway marker on the fuel, the car becomes fun again. The car starts going quicker and quicker and quicker. And that's one of the things where you really have to underdrive the car in that middle, in those early portions when the car's not feeling right. Because if you go too aggressive, you'll burn the tires up too much and put yourself at a disadvantage, not in that stint necessarily, but in the second stint when you want to double stint the tires, you may just have overworked those tires that very little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're looking at setting up the BMW, the McLaren, you're looking to minimize understeer through these fast corners because it's so easy to just destroy the front right around this track, which will make it almost impossible to double stint. So you do have to have tyre conservation in mind, and as you say, these cars, after the tyres have lost their initial edge, they do become quite hard to drive, quite lethargic. And yeah, towards the you do have to constantly adapt your driving style, because as the fuel comes down, you can really start to push them a lot more. As we maybe see a map past the 10th here. Yeah, easy as. Quite smart to just let the driver go through there, because then you can start to save a little bit more fuel and potentially get him on fuel strategy.
Yeah, on the pit stop that we will have probably about 10 minutes left in this race is when you'll start seeing the cars come down onto the lane. That was Jorge Garcia in the Zenith Esports McLaren, getting on past Carlos de la Chica in the number 30 machine, who just about squeaked into this race. He's still got 4,933 I rating, but gives you an indication you've got drivers up there with, almost 9,000 I rating. Bit of a gulf between the top and the bottom in the field. Valkyrie Esports and Thibaut Prévost now under fire from Frigario. That Simsa Esports car has just been pushing. Now looking to try and slot his way up into 6th position. He'll look to the inside, and I think that Valkyrie car will do the same thing. Not fight this one too hard. You can go side by side through the kink, but you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, it's always smart to play the strategy game. Fighting each other. So in a race like this, where you're almost racing against the clock, when we've had such a large accident where it spreads out the field, you don't necessarily want to fight every lap. You want to more maybe think about fuel, think about what strategy you're trying to run, and not lose too much time. There's no need. They have a nice gap behind, and if they just follow each other and interchange places, they can save fuel and also not lose too much time at the same time.
So I have a question for you now, Will.
Okay.
The Nürburgring, Nordschleife, or Bathurst, which one is better?
Better as a track or harder as a race?
No, I'm not going to give you any more guidance. Just answer the question.
Okay. I was having a conversation the other day about what I thought was harder, whether it was the Bathurst 12-hour or the Nürburgring 24. And one thing that did come up was the fact that at the Nürburgring 24, you can make small mistakes, whereas here at Bathurst, around the top, a small mistake can see you in the wall and race over. You really do have to be perfect at Bathurst, which does make it even more rewarding to lap. It's a shorter lap, you can learn it quicker, you can perfect it quicker. And I think the sense of achievement that you feel once you've perfected a lap around this place is probably higher than you would at the Nordschleife, but they're both fantastic tracks and amazing events across the year.
Sitting on... do you have splinters in your butt right now? That was
Potentially.
as big as sitting on the fence as I could think. I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean. However, what I would put a bit of a counterpoint to your point, your mistakes argument there, is that the Nürburgring 24 here in iRacing, we only have 60 cars maximum on the track at once. If we had it like, oh, look at that damage on the front of Brian Lockwood's Mercedes. That is a pig to drive right now, that is for sure. But if we had the full 150, 180 cars on the Nordschleife, I'd argue, maybe not when it comes to the track itself, the margin for error, but the margin of error that you have with the traffic management becomes even smaller at the Nordschleife.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've got to... When you're managing traffic, it can get... It's a bit of an art form. Losing as little time as possible in the traffic is definitely a skill that some drivers possess, some drivers can't get a hang of it. Yeah, I think if we managed to get 100 and odd cars at the Nürburgring 24, it would definitely get a harder race.
I can't wait for it as well, because then you can have 6, 7, 8. I mean, we need more cars to be a bit. We've got the 8-car limit right now. We need more cars to have more classes, because right now you could have 4 or 5 classes, but then you end up with 10 cars per class, which kind of, in a 24-hour race, let's say you lose 50% of the cars at some point, then you're now in a race with just 5 other cars, which is not what makes the Nordschleife so special at times. Yes, you have small classes like the Opel that runs by itself. Oh, the Nazar just hit the wall, coming down out of Forest Elbow.
I'm not sure. I think we'll have to look at a replay.
He did, didn't he?
I think he just brushed it. I don't know if there's much damage on the car, but it's an easy mistake to make. The car just doesn't want to turn at that corner. It just really does not want to turn. But
it's off camber. It's off camber, so it falls away from you, and it's always working against you. There's 3 corners here, which are, hashtag quote-unquote simple, but really just drive you insane. One of them being this final corner, Murray's, where, again, you hit that inside curb, you're into the grass. There's nothing you can do about it unless you want to slow yourself all the way down to a crawl. Then you've got Hell Corner, which is not that difficult, don't get me wrong. But if you make a small mistake here, you lose a couple of tenths, you just feel the pain all the lap. And then the Forest Elbow, where it's so tricky. And yes, he does brush the wall, but he hits right rear first. And that might be crucial to make sure that he hasn't got steering damage in this race.
Yeah, I was doing a race earlier this week, just trundling around, having a bit of fun, and I briefly caught, I actually caught the right rear on in the BMW on the wall, and it just, the tracking was out straight away, and it was, so, even a small touch around this place can really ruin your race. I think I got something like 3 minutes of damage repairs just from a small touch. But sometimes you can get a bit lucky, especially in the car like an Audi, which doesn't really tend to take damage that badly. Yeah, it's a close one.
And that's why I think choosing your car is not just always about having the speed, right? Because you said it earlier, the McLaren does like to crumple a little bit easier than some of the other cars, and you have to be cognizant of that in a 12-hour race here. Unless you're Max Verstappen, and even we've seen Verstappen make the mistakes before, you can't always assume that you're going to be perfect. And even if you are perfect, it might be something out of your control. Someone's gets a bit sideways coming over the top of McPhillamy, and you have to run wide or try and avoid them, and you brush yourself into the wall. You do have to think about how your car is going to endure the 12 hours here.
Yeah, I think that when you're talking about the choice of car that you choose, you kind of balance safety over speed, especially at the track like the Bathurst 12 hour. It's very easy to think, I need to be as fast per lap as possible, and I believe you me, tomorrow's race will be won by the person that is the fastest. I know, shock horror, person that wins race is the fastest. However, a lot of cars will make those small mistakes tomorrow. It is a very, very, very hard race to do perfectly. And when you get down to those lower positions, the guys that keep it out the wall, the people that are able to dodge the walls for the entire 12 hours, can end up picking up top 10s and maybe even top 5s, even in top split, depending on the mistakes that people make.
Well, and don't worry. What you just said is not the most ridiculous thing I've heard recently on RaceSpot. To say the fastest car is going to win is not. It's a good thing to remind people of, because sometimes that's not always the way it works, right? The silliest thing that I've ever heard on RaceSpot TV happened last week when Lewis McLean says, "Oh, the gap's either going to get bigger, it will stay where it is, or it'll get smaller." Come on!
News just in.
Yeah, news at 11. Water is wet.
Something I forgot to mention earlier, not on topic, but we did talk about the date being moved for the Bathurst 12 hour. One thing that hasn't been moved is the date in VRS. So, this here is as we would normally have the Bathurst 12 hour on the 12th of February.
Gotcha.
Whereas, on Saturday, tomorrow, 12 GMT, 13 UTC, live on RaceSpotTV, it will be the 15th, no, 14th of May, I believe.
Yeah.
Either or.
And because, of course, Australia is upside down, summer for most of the world is winter there, so the middle of the year is winter and the end of the year is summer, so that's why it's different, right? So usually this race is just after the peak of summer. Instead, it will be in winter. It'll be interesting how the race goes this year, both in the real world and virtual worlds, and how that's going to play a difference in terms of the racing itself. Great view backwards as down the hill, Nick Madsen tries to defend from the hard-charging Sven Haase for the Biela Racing Team Euronics on board with Haase. Lamborghini versus Lamborghini. Haase has lost a little bit of time this past lap over the mountain. You don't want to force the issue because you'll lose the race before you put yourself in a position to win the race. That's great defending though from Nick Madsen, just forcing Haase to go the outside of the kink to the inside of the chase, and he'll bundle his way through. Madsen fought hard, but he knew when his time was up.
Yeah, nice clean move there from Sven. Yeah, if you can just get it to the inside there. Personally, if I was trying to defend a position there, I'd actually take the outside line in the kink. Force them to the outside for the next corner, because it's a much sharper corner, it's much larger braking zone. Obviously, you're not braking through the kink, so down on the brakes, you can get the move done nice and clean up the inside, force your way through on the racing line, and simple as.
I've seen a comment that they think that, they're saying that Bathurst is harder because you've got walls, whereas the Nordschleife you have grass. Let's be fair, yes, you have grass at the Nordschleife, but a foot outside of the grass is a wall. And it's not like the imbalance between tarmac and grass is such that if you get onto the grass and you're too fast, you're out of control, grass is basically going to lead to hitting the wall. So different challenges, and I think that's one thing where personal favorites come into play. I can lap the Nordschleife for hours. Different cars, just go on and on and on. I have a limit with Bathurst that usually gets reached right after we finish the Bathurst 12 hours, and I won't touch it again until we start practicing for next year's Bathurst 12 hours.
I think due to the scale of the Nordschleife, you're always constantly learning. Like the people that you see on a pole position there are the people that have got closest to perfection. Whereas when we're looking at the Bathurst 12 hours, people can do so many laps in practice that pretty much everyone's on perfection. It's more down to setup. There's obviously setup matters a huge amount at the Nordschleife as well, but I think it comes down, when everyone's managing to get the perfect lap out of their car, it ends up just being the fine minorities,
yes,
which end up deciding pole position. Obviously last year it was a huge margin for pole. I believe it was like 4.5 tenths or something that Max put it on pole by, but that was probably one of the best laps ever in sim racing.
Which might as well be a decade. It might as well be a decade. It was glorious, and you can go and follow Redline on Twitter. They just posted the pole position lap from last year. I'll be curious to see how close they can get this year. Slightly different car, of course. And I believe new tire model, at least updated tire model from what we had this time last year.
Massively different. The tire model in GT3 is ever evolving. If you look at something, I think we were having a conversation today in the team that, do you remember when the tyres used to be faster when they were colder? There used to be a time in iRacing.
I remember the golden outlap, yes, where you crawl around at 30 kilometers an hour on the outlap so that your tyres were as cold as possible when you started the qualifying lap.
Yeah. And I do believe this new tyre model came in Season 3 of 2021. I believe that's when they introduced it, and this tyre model rewards the first lap. So there's like almost the first 2% of the tyre, there's a real speed to it. You tend to see, after you've done maybe a lap or two, a drop off of maybe 3-4 tenths of a second, depending on setup car, how much you use the tyre, how much you overheat the surface. Obviously there's a lot of factors there, but it's much more like you'd see maybe from an F1 tyre, or even a real tyre in general. They come out the box and they're really, really good for a few laps, and then they start to drop off a little bit.
Yeah, from the brief quali practice that I've done, and I need to do a lot more today, especially given what we saw at the start here. I don't want to be involved in something like that. You do 70 to 80% on your outlap here. You get the tires up to temperature, but you don't overly scrub them. And that means that even if lap 1 isn't perfect, you get the opportunity to maybe put the banker lap in, and then once you have a lap time on the board, you just push on lap number 2. It might not be the quickest overall time, but again, it goes back to that risk versus reward, a conundrum that you're not just going to do in qualifying here, you'll do for all 12 hours of the race.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you're looking at this race in general, you can't attack it the same way you'd attack a Spa 24-hour. There definitely has to be that voice in your head telling you this is a very long race where it's incredibly easy to mess it up and end up in the wall. If you end up in the wall within the first few laps, all of your testing is effectively out the window, especially for the broadcast split. There's obviously a split you can do afterwards, which usually, you know, you end up seeing the retirees of the first few hours in that one. But yeah, it's a hard one because at the front of top split, it is going to be flat out the entire time, and especially from the start, everyone's going to be trying to keep the toe tomorrow. It's going to be a really, really, really hard race, and it's going to be interesting to see how different teams tackle it and different drivers approach their stints.
So, Mr. Top Split, what are you hoping for tomorrow?
I don't think I'm going to start the car. Of course, I'm partnered with GoPro Lopez, Pablo, legend.
Yes, hashtag legend.
Absolute legend. And I think he's going to take the start. However, I really hope for a top 10, but then again, I really do think it'll come down to whether we bonk the wall or not.
If Pablo can survive the start.
Oh, I hope he does. He's a great driver, I'm sure.
Oh, pit stops. And this is that tricky pit entry. Watch as you see there. Committed all the way. And there's the cones. Oh, that was pushing to the end from Louis Nager. Top 3 are in and very much was separated by a blanket coming into the box. McEwen, of course, will have the best slot where he can basically roll off out of his stop with the limiter off. Nager will be a couple of boxes back, and Kornbach will be just behind that Audi. Top 3 in this race, McLaren, Audi, and BMW. Looks as though that's the magic number. Did Kornbach get a... No, he's rolling. It was just a longer stop. Louis Nager about half a second quicker in the box, and he's right on the tail end as they come into some traffic.
I was really interested to see, though, Louis Nager decided to underfuel, potentially, to get ahead of McEwen and then start to save in front of him. That is a strategy I've seen a few drivers do this week, where they've kind of underfueled to the point where they get the gap and then worry about it later. I think I saw Shane do that in one of the races, Shane Van Gisbergen, who will be racing here tomorrow, as previously discussed, with I think it's 6 red line cars in top split tomorrow and 3 for Lando. A massive turnout from those teams. And even 3 from us, hopefully. 3 hopefully making top split, but we'll only know when we enter that session who's made it and who hasn't. But yeah, no, he's a lot closer here, and it's going to be, as long as there's no mistakes, a lot easier to hang on and maybe make that move coming into the final laps.
I think what we've been talking about, though, with the McLaren's edge in terms of the acceleration with the turbo power, but also the top end speed because of the way that it can go faster even with a slightly higher wing setting. I think that maybe the opportunity has already gone for Nager to get this move done. I think if you wanted to have the lead, you needed, like you said, to do it with a slightly shorter stop and then try and find a way to do the fuel saving up and down the mountain and back up McEwen coming out of the elbow to try to ruin the run that he's going to get. But you can see bit by bit, about a car length and a half, that Audi is closing and McEwen goes slightly defensive, feeling the pressure.
I wouldn't count him out yet. I think there could be a move on here. especially with the cars this close together. If I was Louis Nasher, I'd want to get through. I'd want to try and very close. I'd want to try and get the move done, and maybe just try and defend my position until the last few laps. Although it will be very hard with the pace that McLaren has.
9 minutes to go, which means 5 laps to go. It should be pretty slam dunk there in terms of how many laps we've got left. McEwen is back and forth trying to break the draft as they come down the mountain straight. It's up, then down, then back up into the braking zone of Griffin's Bend, where you can use gravity both in the initial braking, but also as you get onto the power, rolling yourself through the corner to climb your way up into the cutting. Gap extends 0.6 of a second. Where is the Audi strongest on this lap, Will?
I'd definitely say around the, probably down the hill. I think that the Audi's probably got a little bit more speed through that section, as well with the Lambo being very similar cars. They're very, very quick down the hill, whereas they do lack a little bit of top-end speed, but the cornering speed that they can carry really makes them a challenge to keep behind, because this section here, as we go through down through the dip, is incredibly technical. It's so hard to nail that every lap, and for cars that are slightly easier to drive through that section, such as the Audi or the Lamborghini, it just helps you be more consistent over the course of the lap.
We're also seeing the battle for 7th. The Sven Haase has passed the Valkyrie Esports 18 of Thibaut Prévost. Nick Madsen about 7 seconds back, so that should be damage done for Prévost, who would be +9 from his qualifying, just on the edge of the top 20. Big movers. We got, of course, Fruworth, who we saw really, the seas parted for him, and he took it like Moses to get himself up into 5th, +17 for him. Benjamin Frigerio, we've seen that BMW really be aggressive in getting the passes done. I think maybe even started on pit lane. So I'm not 100% sure about that, but was able to survive some of the chaos. He's +14. Nick Madsen +21. We saw Bastian Salmon at one point in the top 8. He's only in 12th now, but still +16, the slowest car in qualifying. And the lights are flashing from Luke McEwen. Will lap traffic play a factor here?
If a lapped car gets in the way even slightly, this gap will close very quickly. When that Audi is within the 5, 4, 3/10 range, it can really start to close on the McLaren. Whereas McEwen just hold him in 6/10 back is making it so that it's really, really hard to catch on the straight line. I'm looking at the gap; it's only really fluctuating by a 1/10 or 2 per straight. So. It's a hard one here. I don't know whether the lap traffic is going to come into play.
Last time by a 2:01.8 for McEwen, a 2:02.037 for Louis Nasher. As we jump on board, McLaren decides to have no part of that. Shortcuts the track coming down the hill in towards Skyline. Through the dipper, entering towards the elbow. Look how close they get to the wall. This is where having triple screens and knowing those peripheral visions, where the peripheral edges, where your car is at all points in time is crucial to really getting the most out of this track. Half a second the gap now. There's more lap traffic to come. I think ultimately Nasher is running out of time. He had that opportunity, that first lap out of the pits, but since then McEwen has been on it.
Oh yeah, I actually noticed that Nasher made a mistake into turn 1, which cost him, I think, about 0.3 of a second, which is what sat this gap at 0.6 and what it's sat at for the past few laps. As we see a lapped car enter the pit lane. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether Nasher has any answer to the dominance of Luke McEwen in this race.
Might just be one more lapped car, if that, to play a factor here. That's Brian Lockwood in that Urano Mercedes, who I think that's probably day done, tried to recover. Although he is up in P4.
I think it's because he's towed.
Yeah, I was going to say, that looks like a timing glitch more than anything. But we rode on board with that Mercedes. We saw the damage that the World Championship driver had. And that lap traffic, by the way, no drama there. Nasher and McEwen both get past. Kornbach was slightly slower in pit lane, and I think not as aggressive on the entry either. He has dropped back about 4 seconds from the race leader. And a good promising sign for BS competition heading into tomorrow's race. Seen some great pace from Kornbach. Of course, we've seen Phil Denez, Nathan Lewis, and many, many more be strong. Rainer Talvar was a standout performer in last weekend's BMW Sim GT Cup, where he ran away from the likes of Team Redline, Gianni Vecchio and Diogo Pinto to punch 25 championship points to both Talvar and Phil Denez in the 2022 BMW Sim GT Cup. Would not count them out either. But here, out of Forest Elbow, Najer is right on the tail of that McLaren.
I'm not sure if you caught that, but McEwen just caught the barrier in the dipper. He got that gap to 0.8 of a second, looking like he's going to be the set for victory, and he's made a mistake. Najer's going to have a chance here. What way is he going to go?
I don't think he's going to look this time. He might just hold back. The question will be, did McEwen take any damage? Sven Haase is off the track as well. Bit wiggly there for that McLaren as they come down through the chase. McEwen defends the inside. Najer looks the outside. Stations hold for now, but we have a fight, and that McLaren is not looking healthy. Oh! Lapped car spins. That's not a big factor. Kornbach avoids it, but again, McEwen starting to struggle.
Yeah, I also noticed Najer, what's happening is that he's saving fuel. So he's clearly underfueled to gain that position, like that time up in the stop. And now he's just trying to make sure he makes it to the end while still having a shot at this win here today.
Sven Haase has towed back to pit lane, so the recovery drive for the German has ended just like that. We'll focus. Oh, there's. Whoa, wow. Through McPhillamy Park, clips the inside, hard off into the gravel, into the tire barriers, and I think tried to nurse that car back to pit lane, but ultimately too much damage. Will we see that tomorrow in the Bathurst 12 hours? Light flashing from Luis Najer. 2 laps to go, including this one. Time is running out.
I think, just thinking about, and McEwen's slow through the... I definitely think that McLaren has some form of rear suspension damage. He's all over the place fighting it through these fast corners. Najer having to check up a little bit as we come down into the dipper for the penultimate time. Can he make the move here? Has he got enough fuel to be able to make that move and stay ahead?
Down into the elbow, look at how they close. Looks like Fabio Unverdrus has also had an issue. So late race drama with the night sky now well and truly bathing Bathurst in darkness. McEwen got a great exit out of the elbow, opens the gap up to 1/4 of a second. This time by, it will be the white flag. 6 kilometers or so to go. To the outside comes Luis Najer in the Audi. Long way around. Can he make it stick? Not just yet, but 1 lap to go. It's all or nothing for Luis Najer.
As we come down into the final corner here, will there be strategies at play? Can Luke McEwen hold on to the lead that he's held since the green flag, since qualifying ended? The pole position sitter, can he convert this win here in the VRS sprint tonight?
Altus versus Williams. McEwen gets a terrible hell corner. Luis Najer is trying to find the gap to the inside, but McEwen saying, no, 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 if you want this spot, you'll go around the outside of Griffin's Bend, down the hill into the braking zone. They'll plunge. 30 seconds left on the clock. McEwen a nose in front. McEwen holds on.
Oh, it's going to be really close here, Arjuna. I'm not sure if McEwen's going to be able to hold on. He's clearly got some suspension issues as he goes deep into that corner. We're going to go side by side up the mountain. This is really fascinating.
And guess who is closing? Gap to Felix Kornbach is down to 2 seconds. If there's any mistake, any contact between these 2 cars, that BS competition machine is ready to pounce. Over the top at McPhillamy, 1 final time. They'll plunge down 175 meters. McEwen's hit the wall through the dipper once. Can he avoid doing the same? 1 final time. Flames spewing out of the back of that McLaren. Lights are flashing from Luis Najer, who knows time is running out, knows that if it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. He almost runs into the rear end as they come down off the mountain for the final time.
A fantastic exit for the Altus driver there. weaving up, trying to break the toe as much as possible. He will likely push Nasher to the inside here. And I don't know who's going to come out on top as we come down into the third to last corner of this race to the outside. McEwen defends. Does he go deep on the brakes? Does he get it stopped? Yes, he does.
Well, we see the full send into Murray's one final corner. McEwen has the lead, but can Luis Nasher spring a surprise? Disaster to start this race off, but what a fantastic conclusion in our Friday night preview. It's a drag race that Luke McEwen will win in the McLaren for Altus Esports, but what a drive from Luis Nasher to fight that all the way to the checkered flag. From green to checkered, Luke McEwen in the Altus McLaren hopes that this is just the start of a great weekend for Altus in their home land. Bit of a scrap as well between Fabio Unvergers and Benjamin Frigario. McLaren versus BMW, but it does look as though McLaren will survive here. My word, and that you were right. McEwen had to force Luis Nasher the long way around, and that is always a difficult thing to make happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things that if you can position your car perfectly, it's almost impossible to pass sometimes. The art of defending is something you learn from a very young age, especially in karting or any form of motorsport, and that was excellently shown there by McEwen, defending with his more than injured car, it looked like from our perspective. Yeah.
Well, we're still waiting for all the cars to come across the line. Remember, before we even got to the green flag to the start-finish line, chaos, chaos, chaos. 4 cars emerged unscathed. A couple more able to slither their way through as the seas parted Moses style. Here's a look at those race results, though, in our Friday night preview in the VRS GT Sprint Series. Luke McEwen for Altus wins by 1/10.5 from Luis Nasher for Williams Esports. Felix Kornbach makes it a BMW in the top 3. 4 manufacturers represented in the top 4. It's a long way back to Adrian Fruworth for the number 25 Lamborghini. Fabio Unvergres holds off Benjamin Frigario in the Simsa Esports 27 car all the way to the line. Thibaut Prevost, Nick Madsen, Jorge Garcia, and Carlos De La Chica complete the top 10. While down in 11th, it was Roman Verdolivio, excuse me. First time we're seeing some of these names. Live broadcasting, it's wonderful. While Bastian Salmon in 12th, one of the biggest movers. He was up 16 from where he started. Brian Lockwood in the Mercedes, the last car 1 lap down with Sven Haase for company just in front, with a huge incident for Haase in the closing stages. John Rodriguez, Govan Kini, Justin Brunner, Lasse Urainen, Nicholas Laubich, Sergio Ignacio through the top 20. John Derrick, Mateusz Luchak, Harley Horton, Mateusz Milnik, Neto Nascimento, Juan Blainat, Eureka Casdor, Pablo Castro, Sebastian Dunkel, and Carlos Fenalosa. The garage graveyard filled with GT3 cars. Not necessarily the preview we expected, Will, with the level of chaos, but this is a race which is going to be exciting. This is a race where survival is the name of the game, but like you said earlier, the fastest car ultimately will come out on top.
I think what we touched on earlier, saying that, you know, it's likely that we'll see people make these small mistakes with margins being so close. We saw a mistake virtually from every driver there. We saw Luis Nasher hit the wall on the exit. We saw McEwen obviously hit the wall in the dipper. We saw the huge shunt at turn 1 at the start of this race. And as I said, tomorrow it's probably going to be a survival race for most positions on the track.
Well, with that said, it is time to wave goodbye here on Friday night. Remember, tomorrow at 12 p.m. UTC, about 12:20, we'll start the broadcast. Join us on RaceSpotTV for the second special event of the year, the 2022 iRacing Bathurst 12 Hours. It will have a little bit of everything. It will have chaos, excitement, strategy. I'll have it all. Congratulations to Luke McEwen for Altus, though. I'm going to say I put some good luck on him wearing my Altus t-shirt. But for now, so long and goodbye. We can't wait to see you this weekend from Mount Panorama.
Good night.